Hello, everybody. Today we're going to talk about advertising artists. This is the last lecture in the module, so the next thing that we're going to be doing is a test for Module 3. So let's get started. Before we get into the lecture, I want to remind you that I have open office hours on Wednesdays from 2:15 to 2:45. So if that doesn't work with you, just let me know and we can schedule a meeting that suits both of our schedules. Now on to the lecture. The first one that we're going to talk about is an early influencer. But before we talk about him, let me just remind you about the theories of creativity that we discussed in the last video. This stands true with the creators we're going to review today. They're equally influential, and the following artists are only different solely based on their choice of medium and expression. So, this guy is named L. Lazinski. He was born in Russia in 1890, and he was an artist, a designer, and a typographer, a photographer, and an architect. He designed many exhibits and propaganda for the Soviet Union in the early 20th century. His development of the ideas behind the supremacist art movement were influential in the development of Bauhaus and the constructivist art movement, in addition, avant-garde too. His stylistic characteristics and experimentation with production techniques developed in the 1920s and 30s and have been an influence on graphic designers ever since. In his early years, he developed a style of painting in which he used abstract geometric shapes, which he referred to as prouns. Basically, it's noun with the PR in front of it. This was an acronym for a Russian phrase. Translated, it means project for the affirmation of the new, to define the spatial relationships of his compositions. The shapes were developed in a three-dimensional space that often had varying perspectives, which was a direct contrast to the ideas of the supremacist theories, which stress the simplification of shapes and the use of 3D spaces only. He moved around in the 1920s and spent time in Germany as a cultural representative of Russia. And after he was diagnosed with tuberculosis, he spent time in Switzerland in a sanatorium. But it never stopped him from working as he continually produced propaganda posters, books, buildings, and exhibitions for the Soviet Union. In 1932, Stalin demanded that artists conform to a much stricter guidelines or be blacklisted. Lazinski managed to retain his position as the head of expositions. Next up is Saul Bass. You have undoubtedly seen his influence in advertising. He was born in 1920 in New York City, specifically the Bronx. He attended night classes at Brooklyn College. He began his professional work in Hollywood making advertisements for movies. He designed posters and opening sequences for movies, and he was also a logo designer. So let's take a look at some of his work. Movie posters. Now you've got to consider these are all from the mid last century, but it really defined the look of the age. I just feel mid-century all over the place whenever I see any of his work. And here's a whole lot of his work, a lot of examples. And then we have some more. And then here are a lot of the logos that he created that are still in use, many of them. I mean, you recognize things here that are still being used. He's famous for his very simple use of geometric shapes and symbolism. Often a single dominant image stands alone to deliver a powerful message. These shapes, as well as type, were often hand-drawn by Bass to create a casual appearance, always packed with a sophisticated message. His ability to create such a powerful message with basic shapes makes the work even more impressive. He began his time in Hollywood doing print work for film ads until he collaborated with filmmaker Otto Preminger to design the movie poster for his 1954 film Carmen Jones. Otto was so impressed with his work, he asked him to do the title sequence as well. Bass was one of the first to realize the storytelling potential of the opening and closing credits of a film. Next, we move on to Richard Avedon. He is probably my favorite photographer of all time. So let's get a little more deep into his biography. He was born and lived in New York City. His interest in photography began at an early age when he joined the Young Men's Hebrew Association Camera Club when he was 12 years old. He attended DeWitt Clinton High School in the Bronx, where he co-edited the school's literary magazine, The Magpie, with James Baldwin. He was named the Poet Laureate of New York City high schools in 1940. Avedon joined the armed forces in 1942 during World War II, serving as photographer's mate second class in the U.S. Merchant Marines. As he described it, my job was to do identity photographs. I must have taken pictures of 100,000 faces before it occurred to me I was becoming a photographer. After 2 years of service, he worked as a professional photographer, initially creating fashion images and studying at the design laboratory of the New School for Social Research. At 22, Avedon began working as a freelance photographer. Let's look at some of his freelance photography. He worked primarily for Harper Bazaar, which meant most of his things were fashion photography. Initially, they denied him the use of the studio. He photographed models and fashions on the street and at nightclubs and in the circus and at the beach and other uncommon locations. And he used endless resourcefulness and inventiveness that became a hallmark of his art. From the beginning of his career, Avedon made formal portraits for publications in Theater Arts, Life, Look, and Harper's Bazaar magazines, among many others. He was fascinated by photography's capacity for suggesting the personality and evoking the life of his subjects. Avedon quit Harper's Bazaar after facing a storm of criticism for his collaboration with models of color. That was just forbidden back in those times. He joined Vogue, where he worked for more than 20 years. In 1992, Avedon became the first staff photographer at The New Yorker, where his portraiture helped redefine the aesthetic of the magazine. Throughout, Avedon ran a successful commercial studio and is widely credited with erasing the line between art and commercial photography. His brand defining work and long association with Calvin Klein, Revlon, Versace, and dozens of other companies resulted in some of the best known advertising campaigns in American history. From 1979 to 1985, he did what I think was his absolute defining um, work. He worked exclusively on a commission from the Amon Carter Museum of American Art. Yes, the one in Fort Worth, ultimately producing the show and book in the American West. I had the opportunity to actually go to the opening exhibit in the Amon Carter in 1985. This was one of the most impactful exhibits I have ever attended. The photos are enormous. I looked it up and they said they're only like 4 feet tall, but they looked like they were 10 foot tall. I honestly think they were bigger than that, but that's what they said anyway. The subjects are against a white background and they are in absolute crystal focus. And you can see that they're kind of raw because they have the edges of the film exposed there. They're not in beautiful frames. They are just as you see them right here. They're unsmiling, and the staring portraits make you wonder who's actually on display, them or you. I want to show you two of my favorite out of the whole exhibit. There were a lot of pieces in that exhibit. The one on the left hangs in my studio. She's hanging in my studio as a reminder of the influence on my life. The one on the right I liked particularly because it's so raw and so rugged. This is a person who worked in Sweetwater at the United States gypsum mine there. And you can just tell that it's dirty work and it's gritty and he's a real person. And it just touched me. Okay, moving on. Richard Avedon passed away in San Antonio. Um, in 2004. A great loss to the creative community for sure. Okay, next is Milton Glaser. Let's look at his biography. He was a real giant figure in the history of graphic design. He was born in the Bronx also. He was His parents were immigrants with an eye from Hungary. Uh, Glaser graduated in 1951 from the Cooper Union for the Advancement of Science and Art. He also studied in Bologna, Italy, with the painter Giorgio Morandi. This New York City kid decided to mix commercial art and fine art to create a potent new language. He co founded the Pushpin Studios in 1954 with friends from Cooper Union. It was based in New York City, and Pushpin became an international force in the 1960s and 70s with a legacy that continues to inspire designers and illustrators today. He had a very long, successful career. He's best known among designers for his illustrated posters and album covers. The one on the left is his Dylan poster from 1966, and it became an enduring symbol of a unique era in the American pop culture. And then let's go ahead and show you this one. His I Love New York was begun in 1977. This was a campaign promoting tourism in New York State during a really dire period of economic crisis. This became a global meme subject to endless and variation and an indelible symbol of New York City that has been copied relentlessly and is still copied relentlessly. We're going to do our participation exercise today about this logo. What I want you to do is I want you to Google I heart copies. That's the three words I want you to Google. I heart, HEART, copies. And what I want you to do is look at the images. Don't look at I don't want any articles or anything like that. I just want photographs or images of this logo used in three different ways. So it could be I heart LBK or something like that, but I just want you to pick out three illustrations, three examples that you like, put them into a Word document and upload that to Canvas. Okay, so let's go ahead and talk about Glaser a little bit more. He did a lot of posters and that sort of thing. He was a really great art director and publication designer. In 1968, he started the New York Magazine. In the beginning, they actually ran that magazine out of the top floor of his townhouse. He has had an enduring influence on graphic art. He defined a time that still has echoes today. Next, we're going to talk about Annie Leibovitz. Annie Leibovitz was born in 1949 in Connecticut, and she is an American photographer renowned for her offbeat, often dramatic portraits of celebrities. Her signature style is crisp and well lighted. Okay, so let's look at a few of her really impactful um, pieces here while I'm talking a little bit more about her biography. In 1967, she enrolled in the San Francisco Art Institute um, and graduated in 1971 with a BFA. She intended to become a painter, but after taking a night class of photography, she quickly became engrossed in the medium. In 1970, while she was still a student, she was given her first commercial assignment for the Rolling Stone magazine to photograph John Lennon. 3 years later, Leibovitz became the publication's chief photographer, directing her energies toward a unique presentation of the major personalities of contemporary rock music. Perhaps her most famous work from this period is the portrait of Lennon and Yoko Ono that was published on the cover of the Rolling Stone in January 1981. In that picture was shot in mere hours before Lennon's assassination. In 1983, she joined the staff of Vanity Fair, which broadened her pool of subjects to include film stars, athletes, and political figures. So let's move on to some more examples of her work. So you can see that she has done not only uh, music industry, but a lot of the very well-known actors at the time and a lot of political figures. I mean, he's a double dip here. He's politician and because he was the governor of California for a while, Arnold, and then of course the Queen of England. Her achievements were celebrated in a movie called Annie Leibovitz, Life Through the Lens. It was a documentary film made for public television's American Master series by her sister, Barbara Leibovitz. So that wraps up our lectures for Module 3. If you have any questions, be sure to contact me and we'll take care of those things. For our test, we're going to practice coding some print ads, commercials, illustrations, and photography. This test won't be like the others we've had in Canvas. You'll need to download the file available in the test page on this module and work from the directions supplied there. I want to remind you that when coding and decoding, there is not just one right answer. I want you to be honest and make some well thought out statements for each item. There will be prompts accompanying each item. The test will be worth 100 points. There will be 10 items, each worth 10 points. This is a great opportunity to make 100 points. The only way to have a wrong answer and not get the points is to leave one of the items blank. So please share your real honest thoughts on these things that I'm going to give you to code. Okay, so next up will be the test. And after that, we're going to go on to Module 4.